Dr. Kevin, who works at a government hospital, travels abroad with his wife and son for a vacation. He attempts to rent a boat and offers his ID, but the owner declines and says that he trusts him. Excited, Kevin sets off with his family toward a seaside city. After traveling for some time, Kevin notices an island in the distance and decides to explore it. They soon arrive and spend a wonderful time there. But as the sun sets, Kevin tries to start the boat and realizes the engine won't work. He checks the fuel, which is full, and examines the engine, but cannot find the problem. With no phone and no one knowing their whereabouts, they are stranded and have no choice but to spend the night on the island. The next morning, his wife wakes up to find Kevin still struggling with the boat. He reassures his family that since they are near a tourist route, a boat will pass by soon. However, hours turn into an entire day, and no one comes. They have no food or water, and the situation becomes dire. On the third day, Kevin's wife loses hope, fearing they will die. Determined to save his family, Kevin makes one last desperate attempt. Without a functioning engine, he climbs onto the boat with his wife and child and begins rowing. He rows until he collapses, falling unconscious alongside his family. When Kevin regains consciousness, he finds that their boat has drifted to another island. He spots a fishing boat and shouts for help. Fortunately, two fishermen spot them. One gives Kevin water, and as he regains strength, Kevin explains their ordeal and mentions that he is a doctor. Upon hearing this, one fisherman grows greedy. Instead of helping, he demands $1 million in return. Kevin insists he doesn't have that much money, but the fisherman suggests he ask his doctor friends. Before Kevin can respond, the fisherman knocks him unconscious. When he wakes up, his hands are tied and his family is missing. The fisherman coldly tells him, "I didn't bring your family. You can go to the city and report me, but you'll never find them." He warns Kevin that there are too many islands in the area, and without his help, Kevin will never locate them. Left with no choice, Kevin agrees to pay. Using a telephone booth, he frantically calls his friends and relatives, begging for money, and eventually, he gathers $1 million. The fisherman agrees to reveal the island's location, but first demands that Kevin transfer the money to an untraceable account. Once the transaction is complete, the fisherman orders Kevin onto another boat and locks him inside the steering cabin, promising to release him upon reaching the island. Kevin follows the fisherman's boat into the open sea. Suddenly, the fisherman instructs Kevin to bring his boat closer. Kevin obeys, only to watch in horror as the fisherman begins stabbing holes in his boat. His partner George protests, but the fisherman silences him and continues until the boat begins sinking. Kevin clings to a small air pocket beneath the wreckage, holding his breath for as long as possible. Believing Kevin has drowned, the fisherman leaves. Summoning his last strength, Kevin breaks the boat's glass and swims to the surface. As he struggles to stay afloat, a passing tourist boat spots and rescues him. They take him back to the city, where he immediately reports the crime to the police and the Coast Guard. However, by now, it is night, and the Coast Guard informs Kevin that they will begin searching in 3 hours, but warns that it could take a long time due to the number of islands. Kevin urges them to first capture the fisherman and George, since they know the exact location, but the officer refuses, citing protocol. He suspects Kevin of fabricating the story, believing he might have killed his own family for insurance money. Realizing that no one believes him, Kevin decides to act alone. He searches for detailed maps, hoping to recognize the island, but finds nothing useful. Then he realizes that if the fisherman makes a living selling fish, he will eventually have to visit the market. Desperate, he searches the market, but finds no trace of the fisherman or George. Losing hope, he hails a taxi to return to his hotel. He notices a scar on the driver's hand, similar to the wounds he had seen on the fisherman. He asks how he got injured, and the driver explains that certain fish cause such wounds when they attack. Kevin then asks where he received medical treatment, and the driver replies that there is only one hospital in the city. Kevin rushes to the hospital and explains everything to a doctor. Moved by Kevin's desperation, the doctor agrees to help. He provides Kevin with a list of recently treated patients. After careful analysis, he selects the name he believes belongs to the fisherman. Following the address, Kevin arrives at a house where a woman answers the door. As he steps inside, his eyes scan the walls, and he spots a photograph of the fisherman standing on his boat, which also displays the boat's registration number. Just then, the fisherman himself enters the house. Pretending not to recognize Kevin, He denies ever meeting him. But Kevin lunges at the fisherman, attacking him in a fit of rage. The fisherman's wife rushes inside and returns with an arrow gun. Kevin instinctively grabs the fisherman's daughter as a shield. However, the woman fires anyway, hitting her own daughter instead. Blinded by rage, the fisherman attacks Kevin. Despite his injuries, Kevin fights back. But before he can escape, his wounds weaken him, and he collapses unconscious. When Kevin regains consciousness, he finds himself in a hospital bed, his hands cuffed to the railing. Moments later, the officer arrives and accuses him of murdering the fisherman. Kevin also learns that the search operation for his family has been cancelled. As the police officer prepares to transfer him to another location, Kevin suddenly grabs the officer's gun and orders him to unlock the handcuffs. With no choice, the officer complies, and Kevin manages to escape. He boards a bus to leave the city. Tears well up in his eyes. He has lost his family. But then, something catches his attention. Sitting in the last seat of the bus is George, and Kevin immediately calls out his name. Panicked, George jumps off the moving bus and starts running. Kevin chases after him, pleading for his family's location. But just then, a speeding car hits George. Kevin rushes to his side. Holding up a map, he desperately asks, "Which island? Where is my family?" Barely conscious, George lifts a trembling hand and points to a location on the map. Kevin then places George into the same car that hit him and orders the driver to take him to the hospital. Then, without wasting another second, he heads straight to the port. Still holding the gun he took from the police, he hijacks a tourist's boat at gunpoint. The tourists call the police, but by the time they respond, Kevin is already gone. Finally, Kevin reaches the island. He finds his wife and son, both in terrible condition. Rushing to his wife, he gives her water and tries to revive her. Then, he turns to his son, motionless, not breathing. He immediately begins CPR. Seconds feel like an eternity. Then, his son gasps for air. He's alive. Summoning all his strength, he lifts his son onto the boat first, then helps his wife. But as he tries to move forward, his injuries and exhaustion overwhelm him, and he collapses. Just then, a helicopter appears in the sky, which has been tracking the stolen boat. Kevin slowly opens his eyes and sees the helicopter hovering above.